If you take a microscope and you look at a piece of wood and you go down, 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 all of a sudden, there's nothing there. There's molecules, but they're not even connected. What's holding them together? What's the force that's holding everything together? Electromagnetism. Our body is electrical. This is all electronic equipment. The heart, the lungs, the brain. I mean, this is electrical equipment. It's all electrical. Everything is electrical.
Can we measure the effects reproducibly? The answer to that is yes. We now have 20 studies.
There's 21 published studies in the medical literature on earthing and grounding, and this is peer-reviewed stuff. In simple terms, what earthing does is literally it quenches the fires of inflammation, and if inflammation is the source of all root illnesses, including Alzheimer's disease, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, I mean, the list goes on and on. If you can impact inflammation and, squelch it, kill it, stop it, we're gonna be healthier beings.
I didn't know anything about grounding. I had never heard of it at all, but I became a new mom, and I had my first child, and she had colic, and she cried and cried and cried. First thing I did, being a physician myself, was take her to the pediatrician, and remember distinctly leaving that pediatrician's office with a knot in my stomach, because the first thing they told me is, it's a baby, let him cry. Literally the only time I noticed that she wasn't in pain, and the only time I could soothe her, was when I was outside and I was barefoot and I had her in my arms. And every time we were outside, she relaxed. I noticed if I did use a stroller or if she was in a car, she was still in pain and uncomfortable. This is not placebo effect. Like, she had no idea if I was wearing shoes or not. She doesn't know that. I'm holding her either way. And I just slowly started realizing this child can only take a nap and feel comfort is if she was on my skin, held skin to skin, and I was barefoot. She'd be dead asleep, and if I stepped in the house and took both my feet off the ground, she would wake back up and the pain response would come back. And I didn't know what it was called, and I didn't at that time feel comfortable thinking about using it in my conventional medical practice, but I just knew that this is what I'm gonna do to help my child. I was working with a mentor of mine, and she recommended that I ground my energy. And I didn't know what she meant by ground yourself. So the first thing I did was go home and look it up on the internet. And through doing a search about grounding, I found Clint Ober's work and the book about earthing. And I realized that it's a real thing and a real healing modality with tons of medical literature behind it. The light switch went on, and I thought, we're doing things completely backwards here. A typical day for a child is completely ungrounded. Most children wake up sleeping on a bed that was not grounded in a house or a building or on a floor that was insulated from the earth. And then they go immediately into a classroom that's insulated. And even on recess, in the recess period, they go outside and are literally fenced in, and they're paved with asphalt. And then they have after-school activities, which are either indoors, or if they're outdoors, they are literally required to wear protective gear. And even if they're exercising for 2 hours after school, 100% disconnected from the earth. And then they go home, and they go inside, and they eat dinner, and they do homework all hours of the night, and then they pass out in an ungrounded bed. So that's a 24-hour period of time completely ungrounded, and that goes on day after day after day.
I was at a retreat weekend for a group of women. It's called Inspire through our national association. It's for teachers who don't take care of themselves, teaching us how to. The first day I got there, and our leader said, you need to go ground. And I'm like, okay. They grounded us, and within that half hour, there was no need for medication, and I had been taking 2 Motrin every 4 hours for almost 3 weeks. The district that I am in already actually has, with Clinton, a school that has a grounding classroom. One of the reasons that the other teacher pushed so hard to get this room, she had a group of students that had significant behavior issues. And they would rip their shoes off and go running out of the room, and they would all over campus looking for them. They would always find them in the planters by the trees.
But I had one teacher tell me in a special ed class that they had runners. And what a runner is a kid who just runs out of the classroom and they take off and everybody has to go find where the student is. I realized that these kids who are the runners, they're running out to the far back corner of the school campus, and it's the only place that has grass, and they're sitting down on the grass.
And so I went back and I talked to my special education director, and I said, can we try this? Can we try this with some of our students with autism? I brought it into my room, and I have a student with autism, very severe autism. He's completely nonverbal. And, you know, it's a good day when I can get this child to sit for 10 seconds. I pulled my mat out, I cleaned it off, and I took his socks and shoes off, put his little feet on it. That boy sat for 7 minutes straight and played with me. He sat for 7 minutes straight. So I took that back to my boss, and that is something that our school district is looking into, is getting more schools with classrooms that have grounding in them.
I've heard stories from teachers in classes where their students are grounded that they have half the level of referrals for discipline. Some students who were in tears because they were experiencing success when before they were experiencing failure with their behavior and discipline. I've heard stories from teachers with autistic children who have been grounded, where they have less of what they call the meltdowns. And the meltdowns are less frequent and shorter, and they come back into the classroom and they're learning more than they had learned prior to the grounding.
How much of it is that they're just so out of control in their mind, and there's so many things that they, and these kids, our campus is concrete. There's no place. Even when they're in PE, they've got tennis shoes on. There's no place for them to be grounded.
It's amazing what happens, not just with the teacher at the front of the class, but what can happen with a student sitting in the class. And just think if every single student and every single teacher and every single classroom and every single school across this whole world was grounded.
It turns out there's a reason kids love to put their feet on the ground. And these guys claim to know why.
Hey, my name is Finian.
I'm Lauren.
And my name is Ryland.
And we're Kiss the Ground.
And our mission is to inspire participation in global regeneration, starting with soil.
We evolved very connected to the soil, with our feet in the soil, our hands in the soil. And what this means when you're connecting with it is just starting to be discovered. You know, there are papers and things in science that are just very recent coming out telling us that actually touching soil is helping to make your immune system stronger. You can feel it. When you're working in that regenerative relationship with nature, it feels different, it changes lives.
And one of the biggest sources of suffering in life is the experience of being disconnected. And disconnected from what? Nature. And the basis of nature is our soil.
The coolest thing about connecting to soil and the planet is it really makes you happy. It feels good. And now we have science that shows that it's a cure for depression.